overnight, in Japan, the Nikkei dropped. I believe it was a little over 12%. It was the biggest drop since the big crash of 1987. All world markets are looking at the U.S. and the jobs report, what direction the Dow is going. At last look, Dow is now down about 800 points. At one point, I think this morning, it was close to 1,300. So the news on its face is not good at all. Joining us to try to make sense of this is our friend Kristin Bentz. Kristin, I appreciate you coming on with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. Fancy video today.
It is something. When you and I were texting this weekend about this, how much of this? Because somebody from Bankrate said this may just be a correction, that this happens every year or so, and that this you can kind of maybe chalk this up to that. What are you seeing here? Is this something people be long-term concerns, or is this a market correction?
Well, so I'm very much a port in the storm today. I am positive. I'm not always negative. So this is scary. Basically, this really is the result of the Japanese carry trade. And let me know if you want me to give you a quick primer on that and what that's all about. It's probably still 70% Fed driven and market uncertainty. And then, maybe 15% of this Japanese carry trade crashed today.
Okay. So when you look at, for Americans, because here's the narrative is bad jobs report, concerned about that August is going to be as bad as July. And we know that unemployment numbers have ticked up. New jobs are not being created. Inflation remains high. We're not getting a Fed rate decrease. So people are worried, and that they're worried now about the word recession. Tell me what the reality is.
Okay, so the Biden administration has an economist that they work with, and she developed a different definition of recession. So the old school way is 3 consecutive quarters of negative GDP triggers a recession. In this woman's mind, when she sees unemployment spiking, like it did from 3.5 to 4.3, that automatically triggers what they call a SOM recession. So if you're looking at that definition, then it really is happening. And just gentle reminder, you and I have been talking about the country being in a recession for about the past 6 to 10 months. If your listeners are paying attention, they already knew this. So it is scary when you start hearing the R word. And those jobs numbers were horrific. They're all part-time jobs. There's no real growth in the job sector. And the other thing that's really scary is these white-collar jobs are actually being eliminated. So folks that really benefited from the market, that are in a very higher quintile in, making money, et cetera, that really benefited from the stock market, now they're getting scared about losing their own job. And you were asking me what does the consumer do and how do they act in this environment? When they start retrenching and being scared, that's when you have a problem.
So I mentioned this earlier, and I know you'll get the reference. It's the idea of bad perception. And it was Eddie Murphy saying the guys that are worried now that he can't buy his kid the Christmas gift of the G.I. Joe with a Kung Fu grip.
Kung Fu grip.
Yeah, and is that what we're talking about here, where people's perception is this could be really bad and they stop spending?
Well, here's the thing. It's been bad for a long time for lower classes and lower middle classes, right? When you have Dollar General closing stores because the consumer is not even hitting them up, that's something to really worry about. So they've really been kind of carrying the water. But now, folks that are higher upper middle class, high-end consumers, they're a little worried and they're starting to be scared. So this is when it affects back to school shopping. This is when it affects holiday shopping. And that's just uncertainty is a very bad thing for the market and a very bad thing for consumers.
When you look at the information we got last week with these job numbers, that Intel is cutting 15% of its workforce. Arizona is so primed, and everybody has been so jazzed about the chip world with Intel and TSMC. There was this huge influx of billions of dollars in federal investment, and now Intel is pulling back 15% of its workforce. What does that mean?
Well, this is also a little interesting to talk about, Mike, because Intel was the recipient of about $8.5 billion in government funding during COVID. And then suddenly they have to take cost-cutting measures and lay off 15,000 people. So that's a whole other story for a different day. It also depends on what your level of position is at Intel. I have friends that their husbands are working construction for all these new Intel, campuses that they've started building, and they still are employed, but they got to bring their own tools. So that can be scary.
Yeah.
Obviously market corrections happen. I feel like this is a result of a very, very long, drawn out, terrible economy, terrible administration. And that's the other thing. There's no leadership. So where is Kamala Harris? Where is Biden? Where are the people that are telling us to calm down and to be careful and to watch what we're doing and to be patient? No one's giving any advice to the American consumer. And when that happens, I got to tell you, that sentiment, what you were saying, perception becomes reality. And that's really a frightening thing.
Kristin Bentz is joining us. She is a KB Advisory Group, but she's also a guest host here on KTAR News, and she is really our retail analyst and our retail expert. So moving forward, when you look at this, what do you say to the people that ask you for advice? If I say to you, what do you tell the average consumer? Is it time to start hoarding food and prepping? What is it that you see happening in the next 6 months?
It's funny that you say that because I see so many friends of mine that are doomsday preppers, which is like a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
For a different day. But actually, for my trading clients, what I would tell them is if you're in a profit position with a stock and you don't know where the market's going to go up or down, sell 50% of your position, take those profits and roll them into another stock that maybe got a hit. Nike has the historic lows. RH, LVMH, Lulu, all those high flyers have kind of gotten beaten up in the last week or two. So I would always take profits here and then put them into another stock. Otherwise, just sit tight. Just sit tight. Don't do any major expenditures. You have to really hold the line in this situation and really just, cross your fingers. Don't do anything crazy and wait it out. This whole, Japanese carry trade issue will probably unwind in about 3 to 4 weeks. So it's not going to be impending doom. It's just something that has to shake out.
When you look at what the Fed might do, they've been holding off. They said they're going to hold their ground. They want to see inflation closer to 2%. They want to see more consistent dropping in inflation. Is this going to motivate them to drop interest rates? And if so, how much will they have to drop interest rates to have any kind of significant impact?
You know what? I think they're going to have to act this week. Not today, but I think you will see an emergency rate cut. Probably about 25 basis points. When Goldman Sachs takes their level of recession probability from 14% to 25% in a week, Goldman's often wrong, but that's something that I pay attention to. That's a pretty big leap. They're going to have to do something. So I personally think they'll probably act this week.
What are the areas that you think could be hit the hardest? Is it going to be when I'm talking about in the retail world, are we talking about automotive? Are we talking about housing? Where are we talking about people is it going to be when they go clothes shopping or grocery shopping? Where are the places that you think people are going to pull back?
Oh boy. So, furniture has been hit very hard. Anything about interiors. Home Depot came out with numbers that were really not great. And they're kind of a bellwether when we talk about the consumer, right? Construction, new homes, adding on to your home, refurbishing your home. That's rough. And a sector that I follow very closely, the luxury high-end consumer, the watch business has just completely imploded. If you need a Swiss watch for anybody in your family, just go on Etsy and eBay because they are just having a very, very rough time. Even amazing companies like LVMH that put up fantastic numbers in this market, they're still very concerned because you have a China issue with that consumer, and then that flows through to the U.S. luxury consumer. If I were going to buy today and tell you what stocks I would be more invested in or more structured to think about, I would probably look at Disney, which I have mocked relentlessly and made fun of for about a year and a half. But I think the tide is turning for them. I would always gotta pick Walmart in my portfolio. Always in times of uncertainty, consumers will always flock to value and quality. I do a Walmart, I do a Costco, things like that are broad-based consumers as opposed to any sort of high-end luxury name right now. I would be very careful.
Kristin, as always, I love how you can simplify this for those of us that are not experts, and I appreciate the advice, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about this again soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me today.
All right, that's Kristin Bentz, KB Advisory Group.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Tap to watch the first season of Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast. You can also click the button in the middle to subscribe.